Hello all, it's been a long while since I did a video on Doctor Who, but with the specials and 14th's short run concluding, I need to talk about the surprise ending, which means, of course, spoilers ahead. So, the big twist that we see following on from another strange regeneration of 13 to 14 is that we get the first example of bi-generation, a phenomena that the Doctor seemed aware of but only as a myth, and was ecstatic to be the subject of firsthand. We also get an answer of sorts as to why the 14th's face came back, and it was less suspicious than expected, with no outside manipulations but kind of unresolved issues mixed with the desire to just stop, to come home, as Donna puts it. After witnessing everything she did, the 13th Doctor wanted to go somewhere safe, wanted a moment to just chill and reflect. As such, unconsciously she adopted a former appearance and immediately travelled back to a prior friend's location. Does this fit entirely? Well, yeah. Regeneration, especially in the Doctor's case, is seldom guided by conscious thoughts, because there is no way the Doctor would have deliberately taken himself back to Donna Noble. But unconsciously, he was yearning for friends and family. So it's a reward for him to finally be able to sit back and take some time for himself, among friends, and deal with the accumulated trauma he has built up. He can afford to do so now because, well, he is also now still out there doing what he does best. The dialogue implies that 15 will go on to receive the same catharsis from 14's downtime somehow. Not clear on how that works, but I assume as he remains a future incarnation on some level, so it's all merged. I caught wind of a Russell T Davies explanation of why this occurred, and it's one that I don't mind for its potential. Essentially, when asked why he chose to do this, he cited the Big Finish audiobooks as inspiration sources, and that the concepts like the multiverse are now far more accessible and understood to audiences than they once were. That is certainly true. Another aspect was that he simply wanted to keep David Tennant as a potential Doctor return, and could be able to explain his ageing up as time goes by. But that's boring, and I want to talk about the fictional universe. So, Doctor Who has an abundance of media outside of the shows, from the acclaimed Big Finish audiobooks to novels and games. For me, I have always treated this as all canon, all lumped together, because unlike Star Wars, which maintains a consistent timeline, Doctor Who is a show all about time travel. So any incident could have happened and then been overwritten by some other event. After all, time is constantly in flux and a mess, insert timey-wimey stuff quote. Pick a Doctor. In this case, we'll go with Peter Davidson's 5th into Colin Baker's 6th. The 5th Doctor succumbs to Spectrox toxemia after the caves of Adrazani and sacrifices his dose of the cure to save his companion, suffering the poison out and prompting a regeneration. Russell Davies prompts the question, what if? In this example, what if the Doctor survived the poisoning and did not regenerate but recovered, sat back up after a period of recovery and survived? Maybe he did not suffer a lethal exposure, whatever. That Doctor would continue on, and perhaps in one timeline, he did indeed. Regenerations, in Davies' eyes, are not exactly the fixed points we expect them to be, but instead diverging points in timelines. Every time there is a regeneration, there is at least one timeline out there where the Doctor survives instead, just as there are instances where the Doctor has been killed outright that never come to pass. The show only ever follows the timeline where the Doctor regenerates into a new form, and that what-if timeline either fades or is covered in extra media. But this is a show about time travel. In series such as Star Trek, we get often branching realities, but those potential surviving Doctors are also time travellers, and at some point, why could they not both travel back to a point and cross into their own time stream? The Doctor frequently does this anyway. Every multi-Doctor story is an example. Normally, the Time Lords themselves police and regulated this sort of thing. After all, sequestering parallel realities and alternate timelines were one of their roles. So usually this eventuality is avoided. One timeline that, although malleable, is host to a single event of the Doctor. What happened this time that was different? Well, the Toymaker. 14 mentioned that the Toymaker interfered with the regeneration, and instead we ended up with the 14th surviving and regenerating at the same time. Consider the cosmic power levels of the Toymaker, a being that defeated other Time Lords and the Guardians of Time, a true reality, time and universe-bending god. What the Toymaker simply did was pluck the timeline where the blast to the 14th was fatal and one where it was not, and combined them in that moment. This causes the Doctor to Schrodinger's Time Lord and simultaneously survive and regenerate, and we get both outcomes. They are both the Doctor to this point, and only now diverge in paths. Every time there is a regeneration, there is a potential timeline out there where the Doctor does not regenerate. I guess as well as a multitude of other potential regenerations, but those alternate timelines simply fade away before being realised in the timeline we follow in the shows. Except in this one instance, where the Toymaker bends the universe to his will to grab a new opponent to mess with. This sort of event, the Bi-regeneration, is something that the Time Lords are aware of, but it's something that they generally police and prevent because it's exactly the sort of crossing of timelines that's not supposed to happen under their watch. So the myth of Bi-regeneration is born, but seldom seen. In effect, this maintains the continuity of any show or novel you read because it could happen to a different Doctor that has since branched from the main show, with the possibility that even those wayward Doctors can eventually, accidentally, cross into the path of another Doctor from a different timeline. Now, on a storytelling standpoint, the two more narrative ideas sprung to mind with the appearance of two Doctors. Not a meta-crisis human Doctor, not simply a past Doctor operating alongside a present one, but two Doctors with the same convoluted history, now existing without issue in one universe. The first, as with any such regeneration, is the obvious pointing and shouting, "Future Valeyard!" One of these two could eventually go down a dark path of using up all their regenerations and seeking to claim the other's life instead. But who is to say the Valeyard will even emerge anymore, considering he himself could be an alternate timeline Doctor anyway? The second point is a much darker angle, but they could, canonically, bump off the Doctor now. No regenerations, nothing. End of the line. Perhaps leaving behind the Doctor's grave on Trenzalore. They could do that, and still continue by having either survivor stand up and carry on the mantle, where the other one left off. It ups the stakes a little, I guess, because now you can have the Doctor in mortal peril because, well, we've got an identical backup in the wings. Would it be a bold choice? Yes, but Doctor Who has recently been making bold choices, if not always universally popular ones. So what do you think? Does this explanation work for you? The Doctor is always in danger of appearing more than once in his own timeline, so having two of him does not really change much, but it could open the options for other versions of him to appear. Thanks for watching this explanation. I've been Rick, and I'll see you next time for another video. Until then, thanks again, and goodbye.